fellowship, and we also want to thank God for the lockdown and the unlock, whatever is on, that this gives us a chance to meet everybody from wherever we are. Because if it was a live session, probably we couldn't have Jamila and all of you here. But thank you so much for joining. We feel very encouraged. Actually, we had a PRISM related, a software related meeting with the USI people, and it just got over. In fact, some of us left, was continuing. So thank you so much for being patient, those who have joined already. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Jamila, Dr. Jamila Koshy, Jamila Cherian Koshy to you, or is it the other way, Dr. Jamila Koshy Cherian. She has been a psychiatrist for last 30 years, and it's been a pleasure for me to know her personally. And most of us who have been in Delhi for long would have known them, Jamila and her husband Satish and their 2 daughters. They were here, and they were also part of West Delhi for a certain time, and then later they moved to South Delhi. And now she is in Bangalore. Is that right, Jamila? They originally moved to Chennai, and so we are very happy and thankful to Jamila for taking us on to this the talk that we've invited her for. That on, as we see, as we look around ourselves, if you watch the television, sharing with Jamila, I was very disturbed by this news of one of the actors who committed suicide, and it's been going on for like nearly 40 plus days. The investigation, what caused him, there are issues that are flesh and blood, I'm not into that, but thinks that he was lonely, that fact that he was depressed, and fact there was nobody to talk to him, and the fact that he was alone. A lot of people are talking about it, but nobody probably took cognizance of it when it was actually happening, because it was probably treated as normal for him. But maybe there are other factors that led him to commit suicide. But other than that, there have been so many cases that we know of, people having lost jobs, people who have lost their livelihoods, people who have lost their loved ones. And there is a feeling of depression, there's a feeling of sorrow and sadness in the community that we are in. And for those of us who watch TV or news, we hear this all the time. So I thought it would be a good idea for us to look at what the Lord wants us to do as a church, as His people, as a body of believers, as individuals, especially since USI, we are involved in student ministries. And students could be, many of our students could be still here and who are away from home, many of them, of course, returned home, but they're still questioning. The education system is falling apart at the moment. The college students have not been able to write exams, and there's a lot of unsurety. So this thought came, and we discussed, and we thank Jamila for taking it on, and Satish, who's been supporting in many ways. We've already had certain problem with technology, but thank you once again, Jamila. So over to you. Please take us through the thoughts and the talk that you have prepared for us. Thank you so much. Over to you, Jamila. God be with you. Thank you. Okay, one more thing before we start. Yeah, before we start, one last thing, sorry. For those who have to ask questions, either you can keep it till the end, or unless Jamila wants to in between ask you or give a pause. So thank you once again. Over to Jamila. God bless.
Yeah, you can note down your questions in the chat box, and we can have about 20 minutes for that at the end, I think. Hi, everyone. I can see a lot of my friends' faces here and some surprising faces as well. Welcome. Yeah. So anyway, it's great to be back with you all in West Delhi, even if online. Yeah. So yeah, this has been a tough time for everybody. And yeah, Sushant Singh Rajput's suicide has been very traumatic for anybody who's watched his films. He was a good man. He took on extremely, difficult roles, and I like the way he always took on roles which had, a Hindu-Muslim element in it or India-Pakistan element in it. He took on brave roles, and he was a very interesting guy. He actually cracked the engineering entrance. He got a very high rank. If I'm not wrong, he was 4th or something like that. But then he dropped out, 7th. Yeah. And he dropped out of engineering and he joined film. So as an outsider, he came and he really made a mark. But we also know that he probably had this basic instability. Suicide, just to start off itself, to jump right into this suicide issue right at the beginning, suicide is about maybe 50% because of clinically diagnosed or diagnosable mental illness, and about maybe 40% to 50% would be because of circumstantial issues. So there, it is a classic kind of example of something which has a biological or a deep component as well as a social and psychological component. So the whole hue and cry which is being made about him is very tragic. And rather than focusing on mental illness, it has turned into a witch hunt. So we should not join in any of that. I advise all of you to not read any of the rubbish that is being put out. But yeah, let's hope and think that we can find some way to understand about mental illness and mental health generally and spread the awareness across our country, because there's such a pathetic lack of awareness of mental illness in our country. The treatment gap for most illnesses, including serious illnesses like schizophrenia or bipolar or substance abuse, is up to 70 to 80%. There's a treatment gap, which means that only 20 to 30% of people with these problems are being treated at all. So you can imagine the amount of undiagnosed illness in the community. And probably Sushant Singh also had something like that. We have no idea. I don't want to diagnose him at a distance. But the issue is that mental health is really something which we must stop ignoring. And we have to face up to it and understand it. As Christians, of course, we want to understand the scriptural understanding of it. What is God's take on this? And then, so I will spend the first few minutes on going through that. And then we will look at how we would sort of reach out to first ourselves, figure out our own problems, and then how do we reach out to others. So let's get straight into it. What is God's opinion of mental health? What does God wish for us? And that's pretty, the way I always like to do it is to look at what God planned in creation, what happened subsequently, and what God's ultimate aim is. So if you look at Genesis 1 and verses 26 to 28, okay, I'll just read a few verses. It says, then God said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move on the ground. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them, and God blessed them, so and so, and he went on, and we know all that. And verse 31, God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. So we can see here that God is creating human beings in his own image with no hierarchy, no difference between humans. They would have had children, and they would have the clan of humans were supposed to look after the world. That is the story as God says it, okay? So God makes animals, he makes human beings at the pinnacle of the animal kingdom, and he puts a special, special gift into them of being image bearers, being able to think, talk, create, emote, relate, all the things that go into bearing the image of God. And then he gives them stewardship over the world and says, share it together, do it together, rule the world as if you were my stewards. And, to do this, there would have had to be harmony between the couple, right? You can't rule the world if you are fighting. So obviously the couple would have been doing it together, sharing, talking, doing it in harmony, and they would have passed this on to their kids, and their kids would have had to sort of learn and do and follow the same God, live coram Deo, before the face of God. And so there was this whole picture of harmony, of equality, and God sees that it is very good. So obviously their thoughts, their mood, their behavior, everything was serene and God-pleasing and done in front of God, so to speak, all right? So this is the picture of flourishing mental health, all right? This is God's desire for humans, that we live like this. But then what happened, we know, if you want to go a little further, Genesis 2 talks about the relationship between the man and the woman. And we see there again, verse 24, for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they will become one flesh, and they were both naked and felt no shame. So again, you see this innocent, equal, happy, intimate relationship, all right? This is God's desire for humans. But then in Genesis 3, we know what happens. The fall happens. And after the fall, we know what happens, right? All this that God had planned kind of goes for a 6. So you have the equality between humans now destroyed. So you have man ruling over woman. You have then all in subsequent generations, more and more inequality coming in. That was a result of the fall. Then you have this loss of connectedness. Earlier, we were living in the face of God, before God, for God, in God. and we were relating to each other, we were relating to the world, we were relating to ourselves in a beautiful way. But all this goes, and suddenly relationship is lost. The man and the woman are estranged from God. They hide from God. We know that. They are ashamed of their guilt. They feel fear and panic when they see God. And then they are estranged from each other. They blame each other and they sort of point fingers at each other. So between each other, there is this distance. And between each other, now there is a sort of sword between the sexes, as C.S. Lewis puts it. There is this constant bickering and fighting and enmity and man ruling over woman. And then you have the loss of connectedness with the world. We see that the world goes into a spin, that, cursed is the ground because of you. That's verse 17 of Genesis 3. Through painful toil you will eat of it. It will produce thorns and thistles for you. So the connectedness with the world also goes. And you have these isolated, estranged human beings, okay? And their equality is lost, their connectedness is lost, their thoughts and emotions are disturbed, their behavior is disturbed, and this is a sort of prototype of mental illness that was to come, all right? Now, it's mentioned in Genesis 2 or 3, or even indeed anywhere in the Bible, how exactly this mental illness happens, apart from this estrangement problems which I mentioned. But exactly how it happens, the Bible doesn't say it. The Bible doesn't need to say it, because the Bible is not a science textbook. We go to that in our scientific studies, which we learn through our different disciplines, okay, whether it is biology, whether it's genetics, whether it's psychiatry, or whether it's psychology. Through all these disciplines, we understand how this happened. Just like we understand that when humans fell, the world also went into a spin, and we have, climate change and pollution and all the rest of it, which is not the way God created his perfect world. Okay, but of course Genesis 2 and 3 doesn't say that. He doesn't mention climate change. But when we accept the findings and the studies of science and everything else, we understand that this is the process that happened. So what is the process via which mental health deteriorated, via which mental illness happened in the world? And we know that there are various aspects to this, okay? And I want to stress, being a psychiatrist, I must stress, which often is not stressed enough, that biology is important, all right? So biology, the whole makeup of our bodies, which affect our mind. Our mind, after all, is housed in our brain. And we know that the brain, when it develops problems such as in the elderly, whether it's Alzheimer's or whether it's Parkinson's dementia, whether it is just plain senile dementia, or whether it is, some other forms of brain tumors or whatever it is, we know that the brain and the mind are affected because the mind is housed in the brain. Biology is important, all right? And all these things happen, whether it is genes, okay, which lead to mental illness, that there's a definite propensity via our genetic structure to develop certain kinds of mental illness, whether it is our hormones, okay, certain hormones lead to mental illness. Hypothyroidism is well known to have linkage to depression, all right? So like that, there are various components of our body, all right? Our genes, our hormones, our neurotransmitters, different illnesses, which can, even flu, by the way, flu can lead to a very severe post-viral pneumonia, all right? So COVID would probably have a little bit of all that. This happens. And because of this, biology can lead to an illness being present within the family. And this is not something that we need to be ashamed about. There is this huge stigma, okay, in most places over this biological aspect of mental illness, and people tend to hide it because they know that there is a genetic aspect, and so it's sort of always, that's why there is so much of denial of mental illness, because they feel that the whole family will be stamped and there will be a sort of avoidance, ostracization. This is all ridiculous because it's there in almost every family. You look at the statistics, the most conservative estimates of how much depression there is in the world, in India, is 7 to 9%, and that's a conservative estimate. In areas of greater fragility and problems, the numbers can shoot up till 40%, 50%, which is 1 in 2 people. 1 in 2 people suffer from depression. Anxiety in a normal kind of setting without the fragility or extra crisis element is 23%, which means 1 in 4 or 5 people has this problem. Okay, the most serious illnesses like schizophrenia and bipolar are almost 1%. So which means 1 in 100 people has this. Now you have 100 relatives. I easily have 100 relatives. Isn't it possible that one of our relatives is going to have this? Isn't it possible that someone in our family is going to have this? Almost all our families have this. And it's kind of pointless for us to go on pretending that our families are untouched or we don't have any problem, to hide this under the carpet and so on and so to speak, because this doesn't really help us at all. Along with this, along with our bodies being affected, the biology, what else is affected? And that also we know, right? Genesis 1 told us that the equality was lost. And we see that there is an increasing inequality around us. The rich are getting richer and richer and richer, and the poor are getting poorer and poorer and poorer. And this can lead to a lot of problems. I remember when I lived in Bombay, people used to, the trains used to pass through the slums of Dharavi and other areas. And there would be so many incidents of people throwing stones at the first class compartments. And so we were always told, please don't stand near the door when you're traveling by train, because it's possible that somebody may throw a stone. And the stones were particularly flung at the first class compartments, because there is this animus, there is this anger that we are left behind, and the upper classes are having a good time and they're going ahead with their life. They have these rich cars, they have these huge palatial houses, and some people are left to struggle on their own. And in India, particularly with our caste system and our untouchability, we have created huge swathes of our people who are in utter poverty. And can we expect that their mental health will be quite all right? Do you think that they'll be quite hunky-dory with all this? And globally, there is inequality. You have some nations which are extremely rich and some nations like in Africa and Asia which are extremely poor. And obviously, mental illness tends to be more among the poorer section of society, socioeconomically. Along with this, along with the inequality that was lost, our minds were affected, right? Our minds are affected in different ways, and our emotions are affected. And we see this, our emotions often fluctuate. So emotions can be affected. What about our society being affected, all right? So our minds, our bodies, the inequality which comes in. What about our society? Society itself is, filled with injustice. Forget inequality. What about the injustice around us? If you read any of our social media things, it can be so depressing, right? So be careful how much of social media you consume, because it can tend to really make us depressed or cynical. What about our surroundings? It's often, there are many studies which show that green and pristine surroundings can be very beneficial to our health, and unclean or surroundings with lack of vegetation or flowers and things like that is bad for our mental health. But if you look around us, what have we done to the world? There are huge parts of our world which are completely, denuded, which are just so awful. And we in our country struggle with this, don't we? That we have so much of uncleanness around. We have so much of dirt. We have spoiled our rivers. We have polluted our rivers. And when we look at what happened after the lockdown was established in our country, there were so many pictures, weren't there, of the Yamuna suddenly very clean, when the effluents going into the river day by day from all the factories lining the Yamuna were suddenly stopped. The Yamuna became cleaner, the Ganga became cleaner, and this is what we have done to it. And as the lockdown lifts, we might just go back to that. And all this is not very good for our mental health. So our bodies, okay, our minds, the way we think and talk to each other and all these things, our society and our surroundings, okay, all these things have been affected. And this is how mental illness increases all around us. All right. So now that we've sort of thought about what God says about it, how it happened, let's think about what God did about it. All right. And that again comes in Genesis 3 immediately. Genesis 3 chapter 15 says, is God's instant reaction to what happened at the fall. And he says, verse 15, Genesis 3, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He will crush your head and you will strike his heel. And we know that is the messianic prophecy of the Lord Jesus. And it's amazing, isn't it, how God immediately, at the fall, immediately he gives us the way out. And he tells us that I am going to handle this. Maybe not immediately. They had to wait for thousands of years before it happened. But the promise of the Messiah, the promise of redemption, the promise of a return at some point to the Edenic haven, okay, to the Edenic paradise is there in our minds. And that is the redemption which God instantly offers. And it's quite amazing, isn't it, how compassionate that was, because God knew that this would be done at his own cost. It was the sacrificial cost of sending his own son to the world that was going to win this redemption for people. So it is a compassionate, it is an instantaneous, and it is a sacrificing and loving response which God has. And this is important because this is the way that we should respond to mental illness. Because we are followers of Jesus, we react the same way that God himself tends to react, right? And this is, again, of course, demonstrated in how Jesus himself reacted to two people who I will call out, who had, presumably some kind of mental disturbance, all right? And I want to read the first one out to you, which is Luke chapter 7 and verse, Luke chapter 7 and verse 11, all right? And that is the widow of Nain. So soon afterwards, Luke chapter 7, verse 11, soon afterward, Jesus went to a town called Nain, and his disciples and a large crowd went along with him. As he approached the town gate, a dead person was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. And a large crowd from the town was with her. When the Lord saw her, his heart went out to her, and he said, "Don't cry." All right. And we know what he did. Then he went up and touched the coffin, and he said, "Young man, I say to you, get up." And the young man got up and began to talk, and Jesus gave him back to his mother. So we can see here that Jesus, again, reacts the same way that God reacted, isn't it? Of course, that's natural. He's the second person of the Trinity. But there is this instantaneous, compassionate, and active intervention of Jesus himself to touch the woman at her point of grief. All right. He sees the woman. She must have been crying. She must have been extremely sad, worried, distraught, devastated indeed, because he was her only son and she was a widow. And if we were to remember the condition of widows in that time, it was just not pleasant. It was a horrible thing. And Jesus knew what her condition and her case would be. He saw her grief, he saw her sorrow, he saw her mental state, and he reacted instantly, and he brought her this comfort. Then, of course, you have the longer story in Mark 5 of the Gadarene demoniac, all right? And we see here again how Jesus reacts to the demoniac. What does he do? When he sees him, he instantly tells him to come out of the man, you evil spirit, which is why when the man sees him, he comes running and says, "Don't torment me. Okay, I know who you are, the Son of the Most High God." And then the legion asks permission to go into the herd of pigs, and Jesus permits him. And we know what happens. Verse 16 of Mark 5, those who had seen it, verse 15, when they came to Jesus, they saw that the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons was sitting there dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. And then they asked him, of course, verse 17, the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. Now you see the reaction of Jesus. Again, his reaction is instantaneous. His reaction is compassionate. His reaction is active and interventive. He intervenes in this man's life. And his action also was, in a sense, at great cost, okay? Because one, that herd of pigs couldn't have been cheap, right? And my husband loves to talk about this. That herd of pigs would have cost a huge amount of money. And Jesus was willing to sacrifice that much of the world's resources in order to save this one man of no particular worth to the world, who was not in his right mind. Jesus does that. And along with that, what he does is that he was willing to sacrifice his further ministry in that town. Okay, we know that the people plead with Jesus to go away from there. That whole area, the Gennesaret area, Jesus had to leave at that point because the people were afraid. They didn't know what else Jesus was going to destroy in the process of coming there. We've already lost 2,000 pigs. Now we don't want to lose something more, so they ask him to leave. And Jesus, at the cost of further ministry in that place, at the cost of those pigs, at the cost of all this, maybe detriment to his ministry, he is willing to save that one man. All right, so this is how Jesus intervenes. Now, how do we intervene? As followers of the Lord Jesus, obviously we must react the same way, all right? We need to have the same compassion. We need to have the same active intervention in this. We need to be open to considering and reaching out and, doing what is required, whatever the cost, to help people with mental illness. Now, how do we do this? In order to do this, I think we should start with ourselves. Okay, and I'm going to spend a little while on this because often, while we are very happy to reach out to others, we may not, we may not be dealing with our own problems. And how do we deal with our own problems? And again, I want to stress this: that the first thing is to recognize the possibility and the presence of mental ill health in our own selves. All right, almost all of us have some kind of genetic thing in our family. It's quite possible. Almost all of us have some issues in our society, whether it's stress with our work in our workplace, or stress in our families, or whatever it is. We have some issues in our society. Our own minds have our own problems, our own personality traits which can lead us to mental disturbance. All right, for instance, if we have always been brought up as very self-centered people, and if we have picked up self-centeredness, that is likely to lead us into all sorts of problems. So narcissistic traits within us can lead us to very quick depression. If we have always had a fear of abandonment, or a fear of a fear of being alone, then it's quite possible that every time there is a little problem with someone, we can react with great violence, emotional violence. So we need to understand ourselves. And how do we understand ourselves? Understanding ourselves only comes with, with this prolonged introspection, you could call it. But when I talk to a secular audience, I talk about journaling and introspection and doing art and figuring all this out. In a secular audience, that's the way I would do it. But with us believers, how do we do it? We do it through our daily devotions. And I can't stress this enough again. Our devotions, our quiet time, the time we spend with God every day, is meant for us to understand our own thoughts and feelings about the things that we are reading. And the scripture should come alive to us, and we need to apply it in our lives, and we need to confront our own demons, our own problems, our own horrible reactions, our own anger, our own depression, our own worries, our own displacement of our anger onto others. Okay, all these things we can only understand when we let the word speak to us in our daily devotions, and that's really the best way to do it. But apart from that, along with that, perhaps journal. All right, write a diary, write down what you are thinking. You don't have to make this into a 24-hour project that you're thinking about yourself all the time, but for a little while every day, it's good to think, process what you have gone through, process what you did, process the things that you said which were wrong, and correct them. There's no need to again go into excessive guilt. Ask the Lord to forgive you and ask for forgiveness from whoever you hurt, and then move on. There's no need for any excessive guilt. But this introspection and journaling and examining our thoughts and moods and our behavior is very important. I'm going to stress again on this: our thoughts, moods, behavior, and our relationship with others. These are the areas which we should be checking. What are our thoughts like? Are our thoughts negative, cynical, pessimistic? What are our thoughts like? And are these the kind of thoughts we want all the time? We can change our thoughts, by the way, okay? We can change them by the direct control of our cerebral cortex over our primal emotional centers. So if we deliberately process these thoughts and then fill our mind with the positive thoughts from scripture and from the confidence that God is on our side, we can control our thoughts. Similarly, pick up on your moods. What is your mood like? Are you angry? Are you sad? Are you disappointed? Are you, just dejected? Are you suicidal? Whatever it is, pick up on those moods and again bring them to the Lord and find ways to deal with it. Our behavior, this is important. How are we acting with others? Are we doing well at our work? Are we productive? Or are we finding ourselves extremely lethargic? What's our sleep like? Are we able to sleep well? Are we not sleeping well at night? Are we sleeping too much? These are things we need to check on ourselves. What about our activities of daily living? Are we able to, cook the food, get things done, talk to people? Are we doing all the things that we need to do? Or are we finding ourselves lethargic or sad or unable to do it? Check on yourself. What about our addictions? Are we addicted to anything? Whether it's the phone, whether it's social media, whether it's alcohol, whether it's smoking, whether it's pornography, whatever it is, figure it out. And if there are these behavioral aspects to your life, check on yourself. What about your relationship with others? That's the fourth thing. Are you able to relate well to people? Are you having a strained relationship with someone? Is it time to fix it? Okay, so these are the things that we need to be doing. Now, take time for yourself to do this. If you can, take a walk, have a walk with the Lord. You know, as I said, it's always good to sort of interact with the Lord after your daily devotions. Talk with the Lord, pray, go to a nice quiet place if you can find it. If you can find a nice garden space, nothing like it, okay? And uh, figure out all these things and then do something about it. But then it's not always easy. Okay, if you're able to do it, well and good. If not, talk to somebody else. Again, I'm stressing this. If you're not able to do it on your own, reach out to someone else, whether it's a counselor, whether it's your whether it's your pastor, your psychiatrist. If it is severe, bizarre, suicidal, persistent, and if you have a strong familial trait, please don't ignore. Go and get help from, a psychiatrist or a psychologist. There's no shame in that. All right. As I said, the statistics are very high. Many people have problems. Let's get it treated. It's not a problem. Now, how do we help others? So we talked about what God's opinion of mental illness was. We talked about how God acted to intervene in our problems, how we should model ourselves on how God acted, how we start with ourselves, and now how do we help others? Now, the best way to help others really is to just be there for them, just be a friend, all right? And I don't need to tell you what to do. You all know how to do it, okay? Call, send a message, chat, share a book, share a meal, okay? Just call and tell them that you're thinking of them. It's so nice when someone does that. Just call and tell them that you prayed for them. That can encourage somebody so much, okay? And that's one side. Then pick up on the practical needs that people may be having. And if you can fill them, fill them. So be there for people, be a friend. Now that is actually a huge task. And I don't think you should blame yourself if you're not able to do this to everybody in your life. There will be periods in your life when you may be free enough to do it for many people. There may be periods in your life when you're not free enough to do it for many people. And please don't put any guilt on yourself if you're not able to do it. But if you can, reach out to a few people every day or every week, or have some kind of target. Look around you and find who needs help. It's often the isolated, the alone, the singles, the widows, the people who are poor or jobless, or these are the people who are particularly vulnerable, as we've discussed. They're the ones who probably will benefit most from your reaching out to them. So we usually reach out to our own level people, our own friends, our own circle of people, which is fine. We should, as Sushant Singh Rajput's friends, would have been of his circle, other Hollywood stars maybe. So there's no problem with reaching out to our circle, we must, but also reach out to others who may be outside your circle. And in the church, this is very easy to do because there are people from all levels of society in our churches. So take the effort to talk to the one who is standing alone in church. There are often people who are standing to the side, or who often you may notice leave early every week because they know that when they come out, there's no one to talk to them. Pick out such people. And if you see them leaving, quickly follow them out and say, hi, I've noticed that you were in church several times. I haven't got a chance to talk to you. I just came to talk to you. I just came to say hi. And offer friendship. Now, after doing this, the church itself can notice those who have not come very often to church, ones who have not been regular. It's a good practice for all of us in our churches to visit those who are not very regular, visit those who are in trouble, visit those who are in particularly vulnerable situations. All right. So this is something that each of us can do. It's just as well not to diagnose, but if you see, okay, don't diagnose and tell people what problem they have, and please do not gossip about it to others or spread it around. But if you notice that something is really bad, please advise them to get help. Often people may not reach out for help, but it is our job perhaps to just gently tell them that, look, I know someone who could help. Perhaps I could take you along, right? Bigger things like halfway homes and centers and projects to reach out to the poor and the jobless and the hungry. These are all things that people have been doing in their churches over the last few months. And these are things that we can organize and do. And I was telling Supriya that there are a few people across the country who have been really doing this in a big way, all right? And perhaps we can talk to these people and figure out how they did it, and we can emulate how they did it in different ways. I know a group, you all must be knowing the group across the country, which has been reaching out in association with the Muslims and the Sikhs, and they help to feed thousands and thousands of migrant workers who are working home, help them to get home, told them that, that they are not friendless, we are here with you. So all this will help to boost the mental health of those people. All right, so I think as a quick sort of summary of what mental health is and what is the Christian's understanding of it and what is the Christian's responsibility. First, to fix your own problems and then to reach out to others. This is what I wanted to say. All right, so if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer. So Priya, back to you. Are there any questions in the chat box? Shall I have a look?
Yeah. No, there are no questions as yet.
Okay, if anybody wants to raise their hand and ask a question, that's also okay, or else you can. I'm sure you all know the basic kind of mental illness, so I didn't stress on all that, but yeah. Okay.
I have a question while the others are
thinking.
How do you know that somebody is really affected? No, I mean, you have to get alongside that person, right? You have to watch that person or know the person for a while and see something that's not right. Either the person is very quiet or very withdrawn from what he or she was normally.
All right. Yeah, it is not. Yeah. See, obviously, you have to know a person very well in order to know there's some change in their behavior. But you can even notice people who are, as I said, no. See, this isolation is one thing. Even if you don't know somebody very well, you may notice that there is somebody who is isolated. For instance, I'll tell you, there was a couple that I tried to reach out to in Delhi. We didn't succeed, by the way. Was this this elderly couple down our lane who would be completely isolated. They would be walking every day. They would go out and buy some stuff. They would come back and they would go to their house. And the house was, dilapidated, and it was pathetically kept. It was not clean, and there was like rubbish lying around. And there was this couple who was not even properly dressed, all right, in a well-to-do locality in Delhi, in South Delhi. And this odd-looking couple with a big house, completely isolated. So obviously there was some severe problem there. Okay, yeah. I could not reach them, language problems and all the rest of it. So I could not at that point reach out to them. So I'm just saying that you can notice what is wrong. Okay, you can you can attempt that this couple definitely needs help. So it's not impossible to figure out who needs help, even if you don't know them very well. There was another man that I noticed once. You can just see, there was this guy who was walking down the road, and I crossed him the first day when I was driving back from Stevens. I thought, okay, no problem. But after some time, I noticed that every day he would be walking down the road. He was an elderly Sikh gentleman, and he was again wearing all these dilapidated clothes, literally falling off his back. But he was tall, and he was fairly healthy looking, but his clothes were completely torn, and he would be walking on the fast lane side. And then I realized that there's something wrong with this guy because his clothes are getting worse and worse every day. So then I called the police and I told them that, look, there's this man who's very dangerously walking on the road. Please pick him up and take him to his place. And they came and they picked him up and took him. So you can intervene when you notice something which is odd. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to know the person very well. They may not let you in, like that elderly couple didn't let us in. They were not willing for anybody to intervene. But then in some cases you can, some cases you can't. So keep your eyes open.
Yeah, thanks. And
Veronica Messi has a question. Is there any general difference between disappointment for a short time and depression? Yes, Veronica, there is a difference. Disappointment for a short time is normal and natural for anybody. But the problem is, what is a short time? No, there's always a very it's a gray area as to when the person is officially in depression. So the limit that psychiatrists have put on it is if there is a persistent feeling of sadness or loss of interest in the world for 2 weeks, persistent. All right, so it has to be there most of the day, every day, for 2 weeks. That is a long time. Mostly if you're disappointed, you will have disappointment for a short time, then somebody will tell you, give you some reason to cheer up, and you feel a little better. And you usually recover much better, quicker than that. So if it persists for 2 weeks, or if it is strong, even if it is just 3 or 4 days, if it is very strong, if it's accompanied with suicidal urges, or if it is bizarre, if it is odd, if someone is saying that somebody else has done this to me, there is some black magic going on, and there's some camera which is watching me, and that is why this has happened to me. So if there's something odd, then again, you can realize that it is not just ordinary disappointment, it's something more than that. All right? Does that answer your question, Veronica? Okay, any other questions?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much.
Can we?
Yes, Sonal.
Hello.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Hi, hi, Sonal.
Yeah. So hi. Just wanted to know if we know that somebody is going through depression or some other issue, and they don't want your help or don't want to go and seek help and live in that denial, that nothing is wrong with me. Then what do you do?
Then you can't force them, obviously, unless they are again suicidal or hurting someone else, in which case you can file a police complaint and get them to take them forcibly to the medical center. That can be done. Under a magistrate's order, someone can be forcibly committed if it is a life or death situation. But then otherwise, what you should do is step back and just offer friendship. Don't tell them that, don't go as a, don't say you have depression, you need to go. Don't say that, but just be a friend. Normally, people may not refuse friendship unless they have a paranoid problem, a lack of trust, suspicion, some kind of paranoid disorder. Otherwise, people who are depressed would normally be happy if someone comes and talks to them. So just be a friend, okay? And then you can figure out what to do next. Satish Simon, should we rush to give solutions to people seeking help, or is there something more? Okay, thanks, Satish. Yeah, we don't give solutions to anybody, okay? If people are seeking help, usually people know the solution themselves. Nobody needs to have the solution. So what you can do is just assure them that you're there, understand their emotions, and say, okay, I understand what you're feeling. And then if they say, tell me what I should do, you ask them back, what do you think you can do? Okay, what are your options? And sort of help them to clarify their own options so that they are forced to make the decision themselves. Do not take the decision for people, because if you take it for them, it doesn't really work. It is short term, or it doesn't work, or it sort of collapses in some kind of problem. All right. And then the blame will be on you, by the way. So if you take the decision, it will be your problem. So it's better not to do that. You be there for them, assure them that you are going to stand with them, and you question them, help them to figure out their options, and help them to reach the problem, help them to reach the solution for those problems if they need help. That may be the best thing to do. Okay. Hope that is clear.
In line of that, I encountered something like, is it right to offer help before you even asked? Like, because you've noticed something, so you offer, or you wait for the person to?
And yeah, no, that's a good question, Supriya.
Yeah.
That's a good question. But again, I'm saying that don't go and tell them that this is what you need. Can I?
No.
I'll do it for you. Rather than that, you can just say, I noticed that something may be wrong. Can I help you? What is it that you need? So again, you put the question to them and let them decide. By doing that, you are giving them agency. You're giving them, you're forcing them to take control of their life to even a limited extent, which is a good thing psychologically, right? So do not tell them what they need. Do not, preferably, do not even do it without. You may occasionally surprise a friend with something which they need. That's a different thing, okay? But then, if a person is in need, it's better to ask them how you can help them, what they need, what is their priority, and then do that. Okay. Now, for instance, I'll give you an example. We had a lady who had gone through extremely traumatic time. Right? I can't even tell you how traumatic that was. Her husband married again, and she took poison and she gave it to herself and her 3 children. Her son died and she and her 2 daughters lived. Okay, and this was a terrible condition that this woman was in. She was thrown out of the house, she and her 2 daughters, and her son died and her husband had married again. Now this lady, some of us in the church helped her, and she was staying with one of us, and so we gave her some work, found her a place that she could use her skills. She was very good at art and all that. And then we asked her what she wanted and all that. And what she said was, I need to get earrings, okay, gold earrings. That's the first thing I want to buy. And I thought how foolish that is. Why would you want to get gold earrings? But then after some time when she talked, I understood. She said her gold earrings were her sign that she was a woman and she was doing well and she was fine. So that was what she needed to reassure herself that I will be okay. So if that is what she needs, let her get it. I mean, who am I to tell her that that's not what you need, right? So it's her choice, her life. You want to help her, you stand with her and support her. That's all. All right. Pramod has a question. What are the right ways of releasing emotions if someone is in problems? Okay. Well, the best thing is to probably understand what your emotion is and to express it verbally to yourself or to somebody else who's close to you. Okay, so it's good to acknowledge your emotion. If I'm angry, it's good to tell myself I'm angry rather than saying I'm not angry, I'm not angry. Okay, it's, of course you should accept that you are angry, and you can talk about it to someone you know, that okay, I'm sorry I snapped at you, or this is what is bothering me, or you can talk to your close friend or spouse or whatever. Better to find ways of releasing emotions which are not hurting to other people, right? It's always better to find a way which is only for yourself or which is not hurting to other people. If you displace it onto your emotion, whether your emotion is sadness or anger or whatever it is, if you displace it onto others, it puts the relationship under stress. So find ways of releasing your emotions and acknowledging your emotions which are not hurting to others. That's a simple answer. I hope that's okay, Pramod?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I seem to have a lot of questions. Please
okay,
speak,
tell me.
people. Please speak. Okay, Sonal
okay,
has a question.
What if a person, a young man, will keep saying, I'm fine, then how do you help? Yeah, see, as I said, the greatest problem is that people don't understand their own emotions. They don't accept when they have a problem, which is why I kept stressing that start with yourself. Understand your own emotions, understand your own thoughts, your moods, your behavior, your relationship with others. We have to do that. Many people either do not acknowledge it to themselves, or they may acknowledge it to themselves, but they don't want to acknowledge it to anyone else. So here Sonal is giving the example of a young man who keeps saying that he's fine. Then how do you help? Well, you can't force him to help. But again, as I said, probably the best thing is to just then be a friend. Don't go on telling him that, do you have a problem? Can I help you with the problem? But just say, okay, let's go for a walk, or let's go and have a chai, or let's go for a movie, or something like that. So do something else, build up the relationship. And then in the process of conversation, something may slip out. That, my job is in trouble, boss bahut kharab hai, ya jo bhi hai, whatever it is, and wo mere man pe hai. It may come out what his thoughts are, and then you can sort of allow him to talk and ask him how he plans to sort out the problem or whatever. All right. Any others?
Yeah, back to my question.
Okay,
Since we are all involved mostly in USI ministry, and there's a lot of one-to-one things that we're encouraged, but we also in a society where gender is also a matter. So is it right for us to approach somebody from the opposite gender, especially if you have noticed something not right, just by yourself, or is it good to take somebody along in that case, or so that the feeling or the gesture is not misunderstood or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a tricky question, Supriya. So yeah, I would think the easiest way to do it, see, if you have I have the advantage of being a psychiatrist and having my coat, so to speak, which allows me to be able to go and talk to people, whether it's a man or woman or anybody, and it doesn't interfere, because that is all right. But then sometimes whether other people who don't have that sort of degree or white coat, can do it, that depends on your culture, you have to, if your culture permits, if there is nobody else to do it, sure, you can do it. If you feel that somebody else can do it better, then let somebody else do it. If you feel there's no problem, to start it off, it could be fine. Just say, anyway, being a friend is not a problem, right? You can be a friend. If it's getting to an emotional connection, which is a little too much, maybe you need to take a step back and let somebody else take over. So it needs a lot of wisdom here. Obviously, be careful if your culture is not okay with that. But if it is okay with that, then to some extent, it's all right. So I wouldn't put any hard and fast rules on all this. Just be careful, be wise, be appropriate, be discreet, okay? And be aware that that if you share emotional things, there is a connect which happens, and that could be dangerous. So be careful. That's all. I think that's the best way I can answer that question without being.
That helps.
Yeah. Okay, Pooja Kumari. What are imperfect actions to control? What are impactful actions to control overthinking? All right. Thank you, Pooja. See, what I think should happen is assess what your thoughts are. If your thoughts are always about worry or about fear of the future, about, maybe fear of losing your job or fear of someone getting the illness or whatever it is, assess what your fears are. And then as a follower of Jesus, we take them to the Lord and we just tell them that, Lord, I'm worried. This is the condition that I'm in. And in our daily devotions, we ask the Lord to speak to us, and he will probably assure us, right, that he is in control, that we don't need to worry, that death is not something to fear, right, that he loves us, he loves our families, he's in charge, he will bring good out of. So all the Christian principles, when we let them sink in, that can help to deal with anxiety. But sometimes, as I said, there is a biological component to this anxiety, okay? The anxiety is driven by a deep biological substrate, which is causing these anxiety producing chemicals to flood your brain. So at that point, you may not be able to control it by just praying or asking the Lord to help you. You may still struggle like anything. So at that point, there's no need to deny yourself treatment. Just go and get treatment, all right? There are lots of medications to handle anxiety, which is actually the commonest mental, slight disturbance that people have. And there are a lot of medications to control anxiety, and they're very effective. There's cognitive behavior therapy, which is very effective. There are different kinds of, ways of handling this in a professional setting. So please go and get help. People can help you if it is very severe, if it is causing symptoms in your body, for instance, palpitations or a dry mouth or sweating or lack of sleep or, all these problems that they are associated, that means your body is very much involved. So if that is the case, please go and get professional help. All right. Otherwise, prayer, Bible study, putting, taking a walk with the Lord in your garden, that may be, helpful for you. And playing with your dog, listening to music, all these things may help you in short term to control your anxiety and thinking. Okay. Anything else? Yeah, Supriya, you saying something?
Okay, as a Christian aspect again, this is a question that somebody else had asked who is not here today. Since we all, you worked that out already, that every counseling series of sessions, 1 or 2 or more, should it lead, as a Christian I'm asking this, should it lead a possibility to lead them to the Lord? Or is it not right to do that? I mean, is it right or not right, basically?
Yeah, see, that is, I don't think that counseling sessions should at all be to lead people to the Lord if the person is not wanting to talk about that. Okay, it is in a professional setting. That is definitely how the professional ethics goes. You can talk about religion if the person is religious and they want to allow religion to be part of their therapy. If they don't want to talk about religion, we have no business to force it on them, particularly when we are in the role of counselor and counselee, because we have the, in a sense, what shall we say? We are in a position of responsibility, right? So in a position of responsibility, we should not misuse our responsibility by using that time to evangelize or anything like that. That's not correct. We shouldn't do that. Okay. So deal with the immediate problem and be friendly and be kind. And if you do that, at some point, they will probably ask you, how do you function? How does your life function? And if they ask you, you tell them that for me, this is the important thing. All right. Andrea has a question. What about the people who don't know the Lord and they go through kind of depression and anxiety for years together? How to deal with them? Yeah, as I said, Narsima, the incidence of anxiety and depression is very high, okay, in normal people. and also among Christians. It's not that Christians are immune from this, not at all. So then how do you handle it? You deal with them, as I said, you start off with the simple things. Be a friend, help them, try and reach out to them. If it's persistent anxiety for years and years, as you're saying, then they probably need more, no? And I said there is a strong biological component to this. So please tell them to go and get, treatment, either from a psychologist or from a psychiatrist. Medicines will help because it is biology, it is a medical illness. We sort of ignore that because we think that it is just a spiritual or mind thing. But our mind is in our brain. Our brain is controlling our mind to some extent at least. Okay, so the biology is important, and physical treatment, medication, and all that can help a great deal. So you can suggest it to them, give them some reading material. If they want to go for help, they can. I hope that's okay, Narsima.
Yeah.
Thank you, sister.
Okay. So that will go along with therapy, okay? Medication, therapy will go hand in hand, and that will help people to sort out their problem.
People, any other question? Young people, students, youth, you should be asking questions. Any other question, anybody?
I see a lot of my friends here. Hi, everyone. I'm seeing more and more people now.
It'll be nice to see everybody if you can all turn our videos on. It's nice.
Yes, please do that.
Yeah, let's all turn our videos on and we can come together and somebody can click. Jamila was also part of West Delhi, right? Which years were that? You lived in West Delhi. Remember?
We were part of Dwarka EGF.
So, sister.
Hi.
Hello, sister. How are you?
Yes. Hi. Venkat, is it?
Prasanna this side.
Prasanna.
Prasanna.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
How are you?
Yes, nice to see you all. Yeah.
And let's all say hello. But before we do that, we will do the formal closing of this. So please don't leave. Just we'll say hello. I would request Brother Venkat to just say a few closing remarks, and also Brother Satish to close in prayer at the end. And then we will say hello. And
here, Satish is here too.
Yeah. So first, Satish Cherian, or we're talking about Satish Simon.
No,
hello.
My husband Satish. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Satish. I didn't see him. Okay. Hi. Okay, but I was requesting Brother Venkat to give some closing remarks. So let's listen to Brother Venkat. Over to you. Venkat? Hello? Is Venkat, are you there?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
Unmuting.
Yeah.
Unmuting.
Nice okay. Yeah.
Hi, Venkat.
Hi, Alaka. It's nice to hear you on behalf of our West Delhi. Thank you for being with us. It's really encouraging to know about us, actually. You have brought how clearly how after the fall, the inequality and the biological changes, all the illness has come into the world, and how we can rectify it, how can we deal it. First of all, we ourselves itself, we have to fix our own, very clearly motivating how to set right in our thoughts and behavior and attitude, all the things. It was so touching me also. And then after we have good relationship with God, with all the things, even we are some or other, as you said, even our thoughts, our attitude, we are depressed, or something illness, mental illness is there in each one, in one sense. But to rectify it, as a Christian believer, have a right relationship, right close walk with the Lord, have quiet time and meditation and walk with Lord. That's very clearly you challenged us. And not only that, then only when we are all right, then we should have concern for the others, try to meet all the things, others with the same attitude of how God did, how Jesus did, the compassion, the loving, the sacrifice, the immediate concern. Thank you very much for that. And it's an asset for me. From yesterday, I joined a certificate course of counseling yesterday, and today I was on the course. it was an asset to me also. Thank you very much.
So we close in prayer, and after that, probably if there is any little more talk if necessary, shall we pray? Father, we thank you for this gift of our minds, beautiful mind that you have gifted us, and at times, Lord, we realize how, Father, we get disturbed over a lot of things. We thank you for the fellowship that really strengthens us to think through, and we also thank you for the gift of medicine, Lord, that has helped at times when, Father, we are not able to control our thoughts, and even when there are difficult issues that affect us. Thank you for the insights that you gave for us. Thank you for each and every member who joined today, Lord. We may not know everyone, but Father, we commit every one of them and the reason why they are joined. In case there are needs we go through, Lord, we pray that you will be with them, touch them, and open avenues where they will find places to share and be cared for. Once again, thank you for Jamila Didi for the way in which she could articulate so clearly, Father, this whole area of mental health. And we thank you for people who are able to strengthen us in this field. Once again, till we meet, we pray that you keep